I have grown a lot in my garden over the years, a lot. And I've grown a lot of different varieties, different vegetables, stuff like that. These are the 5 vegetables that I will never grow again for a multitude of reasons. But I think this is fun, and it's a really important time to really think about that, because the planning portion of our garden season is coming up, and usually it takes me a while to really decide in exactly what varieties and stuff I want to grow. And it's always good to start with what I would never grow. I think it's important for every garden to have your main staples that you grow, but then to test out and grow other things every year and see what you like. And eventually, you know, the long-term goal is to hammer down something where you really just get the same varieties that produce for you every year and you're really happy with them. That's at least my goal, and that's what I want to have come from my garden. All right, so the first one is I absolutely will never grow yellow pear tomatoes in my garden again. The main reason why is every time I've grown them twice, and both times it produced so many tomatoes I could not keep up with it, and I was just wasting them, and it just ended up being a waste of space in our garden. Not to mention, and you can kind of lump this in with this multicolored tomatoes, like yellow tomatoes and stuff like that. I'm a purist. I like a good solid red tomato. So that's why we only do 1 cherry tomato. But the yellow pear tomatoes in particular were just super productive, which, you know, it's like cry me a river, right? You get plenty of produce, but I couldn't figure out how to use them appropriately. So we just scrapped that variety. Pepper plants are coming back from the storm beatdown they got. That was kind of rough, but thinking about for peppers, I mean, if you look at these, so this is coming like we're planned. You can see we've got a number of jalapenos on here. Habanero peppers. I don't think I will grow habanero peppers ever again in my garden. Multiple reasons. One, they're too hot. They're too hot for me. So what I've noticed when I grow peppers, hot peppers, is they're hotter than you get at the store. And then you often wonder, well, why are they so hot? Why is this jalapeno hotter than the ones I get at the store? Well, it's because the way that we water here, we starve them with water. Typically speaking, gardeners do that. The last video we talked about how farmers water their crops. When you stress out a hot pepper, it gets hotter. And what we found were the habaneros were just too damn hot. And much like the last one, they just produce way too many peppers. If this was a habanero plant, you would see nothing but orange all over it. It was insane. We've grown them a couple times and it's the same thing. We just had to back off and not really do it anymore. Just too much. Thought my heat tolerance was a little bit hotter, but you know, it is what it is. So I know that there's other hot peppers out there that don't produce as much. I wanted to grow them if, you know, I wanted to make a pot of chili or something, I'd throw 1 or 2 in. Something like that. But I think that and I know that there's other hot peppers that can produce the amount that I want to put into my garden. And also, you know, as far as harvesting, if I want to use it for chili, I can dry it, use it for chilies, stews, stuff like that, and not have 4,000 peppers off of 1 plant, you know, and sometimes that's just a real thing. Okay, so at this point, if there's anything in your garden that you won't grow anymore, let us know in the comments below and why. I think it's a fun thing, and you can help other people in your area that, you know, may not know or realize it, because some things just won't grow well in your garden, in your climate. So that's something that we really need to focus on. Another thing that doesn't really grow well in my area, and there's gonna be a lot of people that will deny this and say otherwise, and that their gardens it does fine, but for me it's an indeterminate tomato. So in this bed behind me here, I grew orange, banana, tomatoes one year. They were indeterminate. I didn't realize they were indeterminate until they got about 10 feet tall. And what happened was they got so tall, I struggled to trellis them, and by the time they started to produce, we were losing tomatoes off of them. The plants were getting diseases and stuff like that because of the heat and humidity here. And that was a big turning point for me when I was like, you know what, from now on, I'm only going to focus on determinate tomatoes. And it really opened up my, you know, what it helped me do, because when I choose what I want to grow in my garden or anything in life, I work well off of limitations. And limiting myself to determinate varieties was able to help me narrow it down more and more to what I wanted to grow and what grew well in my area. And I embrace that. So, you know, we have a handful of determinate tomatoes we're working through to find the ones that we like, but those indeterminates, just with that heat and humidity, come about July, they really were starting to produce. But the heat and the humidity, and then God forbid we got like a tropical storm or something, one, it'd blow over the plant, two, the days and days of humidity and rain would just wipe it out. So we just went with determinates, and by the time that stuff kicks in, if you time it right, it's out of there and you're starting another plant for your fall harvest. I love my Seminole pumpkin, and you can see all of this is Seminole pumpkin everywhere. I love it. And I also, what we usually do, and we didn't this year, but we probably will next year, hopefully, maybe, is we rotate from butternut squash into Seminole pumpkin. Basically, they give us so much that we don't want to eat them year after year. We like to separate them a little bit. So that's what we do with that. But the next one that kind of falls in line with these is spaghetti squash. Well, I'm going to be honest here. I've grown spaghetti squash once. I lived in New England at the time. And when I grew it, I had to go, I think I went backpacking. I went to the mountains and I was gone for like a week or two. And I called my buddy and I said, hey, would you check on my garden? And he said, yeah, absolutely. And I said, anything you want to be harvested, that can be harvested, you want it, just take it while we're gone, doesn't matter. So we came, I had a spaghetti squash. I had one squash on there and my man harvested it. That was the only thing I didn't want him to harvest. So I never really got to get my harvest off of it, but I've eaten it since and I just don't enjoy it. It's just not good. And we were vegan at the time. I was vegan for 10 years and I didn't like the, you know, the consistency of it. It never really meshed well with replacing noodles for spaghetti. It just wasn't for me. So we just decided that we're not going to grow spaghetti squash anymore, and that's okay. It's okay not to like something and grow it. And I know YouTube as a whole, people gasp when you say you don't like something, and then they hit you in the comments trying to tell you, you should grow this, you should grow. It doesn't matter if you are a creator or a viewer, somebody's going to try and convince you otherwise from how you feel, and I'm not that person. If I don't like it, I don't like it. Bring you over to the pond, not just to flex about the pond and show you, which it is a nice pond and I'm mighty proud that we built this, but that's not what this is about. Next one is strawberries. I'm not growing strawberries anymore. I brought you over here because at one point we had the idea that with about the first 3 feet of this going all the way back, all the way across, was going to be strawberries. And it worked okay. I've tried to grow strawberries in every single garden I've ever had, and it's never really been great. You know, it's one of those things where there's just so much maintenance to it, meaning, you know, the suckers, you've got to pull them and you got to replant them and then they don't last. And, you know, as far as like perennial crops go, it's a really crappy one in my opinion. And one thing that we did too, and I didn't realize at the time, and if I was ever going to go back and revisit strawberries, I would do different. So strawberries are a come once crop, basically speaking. You know, you usually get them around June. That's why they're called June bearing strawberries. Well, there's also the variety of ever bearing, which means you kind of get them consistently throughout the year, but you don't get those strawberries that are consistently the same size that you normally get, right? And that was a problem we had because we didn't want to go and say, hey, we're going to enjoy strawberries for the month of June and then go from there. I didn't understand how that worked. Since gotten very used to it with these blueberry plants, you know, they start producing, I would say right around the end of April and go all the way through the middle of June, even maybe early July, we'll be wrapping up our harvest on it. And then after that, it's done. And we really enjoy these while they're here. But once they're gone, it's okay. And we've gotten used to that. Gotten used to that period going without, and we just transfer to something else. So at this point, if you were to look at it and we were to say, hey, we've got the blueberries that grow and they come through that period of time we just gave. Then we've got the strawberries, which really come in here between May and June. So you have that, and then we have our peaches that we'll start getting from like July into August. Then we kind of have a little bit of a steady flow, but I just don't know if I want to do strawberries again. It's too much work, and the juice just wasn't worth the squeeze. You know, we can eat so many, we'd have to have a big patch of strawberries, and it's okay. Promised you 5, and I'm not sure if I've given 4 or 5. I think I've given 5, but if not, you're either gonna get the 5th, or of course you're gonna get a bonus. And so the bonus one for us is something that we just won't grow anymore, is anything that is said that it is extra cold tolerant. So the reason why is because we want to grow into the wintertime, and we know we want to grow into the wintertime, and we know that we have to find a way to grow into the wintertime. And a lot of times we can use varieties to kind of get ourselves into these positions to where we can grow something a little bit better, right? We can have a little bit more success. Well, with this, what we found was we actually had the opposite effect. Because of the heat here, the cold tolerance made it more susceptible to bolting, and we just kind of, every time we've grown anything that was specifically cold tolerant, we've lost on it. So, you know, lettuces, anything, so like kale is naturally cold tolerant, but like your lettuces, some of the radishes, some turnips we've done, some other greens and stuff like that, they just don't do well. So we just stopped that altogether. And what we realized was when you plant naturally cold tolerant plants, they can actually take the cold here very, very well. And as you get farther and farther north from me, I'm in coastal North Carolina. So as we get farther and farther north, then you're gonna start to see that that will actually help you. So, you know, if you're in, you know, and I hate to use zones, but actually, you know what, I'm not even gonna use zones because zones don't matter, so don't ask me my zone. If you're in, I would say, roughly New Jersey, going across the nation, you know, if you look at the map, it would go down New Jersey, ride West Virginia, Ohio, all that, and then kind of come back up and skirt around California. From there north, that's where a lot of your cold tolerant veggies will help you out a lot and really get you going into the right direction and help you beat the cold to some extent. So I think it's not widely known and people just want to rely on that. But I think it's important that we realize what these crops can handle and how amazing the creation of the seed is. And it's really shocking when you do it. So don't do cold tolerant if you don't have to, and don't use heat tolerant if you don't have to either. If you're up north, there ain't no reason to use heat tolerant. And I find right here where I am in the mid latitudes, you kind of get the best of both worlds. We could go a little bit heat tolerant on some, but better yet, why not just focus on crops that grow better in the heat?